Góðan daginn allir, velkomin á þessan föstudags fyrirlestur. Kay Sauter verður hérna með fyrirlestur Deploy SQL í Azure með PowerShell, Bicep eða Terraform. Þannig að ég mæli endilega að spyrja hann ef það hafa einhverjar spurningar og ég ætla bara byrja hann velkomin. So, welcome Kay to this Azure. Did I pronounce your name correctly? Kay. Is it Kay or Kay?
So a lot of people in that speak English call me Kay, but since my name is actually German, it's actually Kai. So
Kai.
It's
Kai.
Kai. Yes.
Kai. Okay. So Kai, welcome. Thank you for this, and I know that people have been expecting you to talk, so I'll just give you the word and good luck.
Thank you, Gerald. Thank you. So start my presentation here. Just give me a sec to go to presenter mode. Right.
We can see.
Great. So welcome to my session here, deploy SQL database to Azure with PowerShell, Bicep, or Terraform, and why you may want to opt for PowerShell. So forward, I'm actually deaf. So if you have any problems with hearing as well, I can recommend you to turn on the live captioning capabilities by Microsoft Teams. If you want to see something closer within Microsoft Teams, you can also zoom and pan around between your mouse, so it's a bit easier to see. So I hope I did actually everything is sizing well, so you don't have to. But nevertheless, if you need to do this, there is an option for this as well. So just shortly about me, I am a solution architect at data analytics for Berkeley, Swiss. Which is actually the French-speaking part of Switzerland, but I'm working in the German part of Switzerland. So my native language is German, like I said before, and my specialization is in SQL Server, PowerShell, and Azure Synapse. So I'm a data platform MVP. So it's not like it's really very comfortable with the topic that I'm talking to today, because I'm not an infrastructure or Azure infrastructure MVP. So at the moment, also what I want to point out, again, have about 6 years, I'm deaf, like I said before. I use cochlear implants to hear, and I'm also a data DJI founder leader, which is also a user group here in Switzerland. It's for free to attend. This is like this. You can just switch it on like here via Microsoft Teams. I also organize a conference here in the German Europe. Basically, that means Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and the conference is going to happen this year again on November 25th. I'm also a co-leader of the data platform, the AI virtual group, which is the diversity, equity, and inclusion virtual group for data platform. I live in Zurich, in Switzerland. So just to make sure, again, I am not an infrastructure expert. I walk into a minefield here, actually, so it's something that usually you should not do, but I'm nevertheless doing, because I'm always trying to expand my horizon, and I know a few stuff about the infrastructure on the Azure, of course, and that's what I'm going to do this. But nevertheless, if you spot something I missed or forgot or even did something wrong, you're always welcome to correct me here at this point, because I always like to learn about it. If you want to follow up and discuss something with me later, that's how you can reach me through my blog, through Twitter, also my email address, and others. So it's on the code. Actually, I'm going to present here today is also on GitHub, so you always can look it up. What we are going to discuss today, introduction to the infrastructure as a code in general. So if you are not familiar to it, you can see why we would want to do this. And of course, we will talk about the ARM. We will talk about CLI and PowerShell, Bicep environment file, and Terraform, of course. Not to forget is also the personas. Like I said before, I'm actually a data engineer kind of guy. So I think it's also something we should discuss sometimes a bit more. What kind of personality or personas you have to work with, what kind of offerings you want to really do. So basically, you have to keep in mind who is actually working on those kind of code. So two personals already discussed. So I'm also the kind of a database administrator with some knowledge of infrastructure. So and the versus of infrastructure engineer for private and public cloud. So this can kind of clash a bit because those views and the perspectives of those kind of engineering standpoints can differ. So those are something I want to point out. So at first, why would we want to automate virtual machine deployments in the first place? Because what we are going to talk about today is basically an example I did some years ago, and this also developed this session for. And this session here actually is kind of a improv session to this session I usually give. So what we have basically is a setup that we want to have easily. We want to reuse the code again. If we want to actually also delete maybe the virtual machine again, because the data engineer, for example, want to just test out something on a VM because we are used to work on Windows, for example, and just can use it that way again. And if we don't need this virtual machine anymore for some reason, because it just every now and then can work on it, for example, then you can delete it and you don't pay it anymore if you use the pay-as-you-go version of it. So this is also an idea for to test and try out some new things as a database engineer. Of course, you also could use it for testing. You also could have showcasing, for example, if you just want to give a customer or internal customer a possibility to just try out things, then you just can set it up easily and just delete it afterwards later again. So if you have an infrastructure as a code at this point, you can reuse the code again and just alter it. Maybe if you realize you need to alter something again, and it's much easier to deploy instead if you just have to start from the scratch every now and again. Yes, if you also have compliance stuff that you have to be aware of. This is also something that you can do with VMs. You just have a container, a containment that you actually just keep it away from the normal deployments. So if you have compliance policy issues, this is also a possibility you can take care of it. So what is ARM? ARM stands for Azure Resource Manager, and it can get convoluted very quickly. You probably know it because you probably infrastructure engineers. What we see here is a JSON file, which is pretty hard to read, pretty hard to work with, because you have just way too many brackets, to have way too many apostrophes and columns and stuff like this. So there's a quite overhead for people, human people, to read, but this is perfectly fine as a machine readable thing. So it's on this code example that we see here on the screen is basically just an introductory example by Microsoft, and it can look far more complicated than this. So just keep this in mind. PowerShell is actually a native tool provided by Microsoft for Azure. And by the way, also many database administrators actually also use it. That's why this is, from my perspective, this is actually also more approachable, easier for me to handle. It's easier to understand because we already know this language. It's something we use also to administrate SQL Server with. So it's something we actually know. But there are, of course, alternatives. Like I said, ARM is an alternative you still can use, because you actually can, if you deploy something manually, the portal from the Azure portal, then you actually can export the JSON code from there and use it again, and you have something like this. Then, of course, Bicep is something that we are going to discuss with today. The Terraform is also a popular choice. It's just not by Microsoft. It is actually by HashiCorp. And we will discuss it a bit later. Again, it's not something that is natively supported by Microsoft, because it's actually not a language by Microsoft. The same case is with Ansible by Red Hat, for example. But there are many other options more, like Chef and Puppy and whatnot. I don't know all the tools. You probably know more than I do. So we have something like this. And the solution I'm going to present you in PowerShell is actually a solution that is ideal for smaller scaled user cases. Although I've heard that some people actually also were successful to use it for a bigger scale than I actually showing it here today. But I usually personally probably would, if I would really deploy something bigger, probably I would opt for Bicep, as I will discuss it later again. So what is Bicep? Bicep is a transpiler to the ARM. So it's something you have to keep in mind. It's under the hood of Bicep. By the way, same for CLI, also the CLI thing, or the PowerShell. So it's just the code line interaction things by Microsoft to actually have ARM behind it. The same is, of course, also true if you have something like Terraform, then you still kind of use ARM, because the Azure is actually built with ARM is really the baseline where it was actually first. Also, it took some years until Microsoft came up with Bicep, and I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago when Bicep was actually first published. So if you really have something to develop on Azure, keep in mind everything you actually deploy under the hood is actually ARM. Like I said, Bicep has only been developed very recently. It's a pretty new language, and it's also by Microsoft, and it's actually open source. So if you want, you actually can contribute with Microsoft with your own ideas with Bicep. It's free to use, and it's actually, at least it's aimed to be 100% supported in Azure, and it's Azure only, so it's a domain-specific language. You cannot, let's say, use Bicep to another platform, let's say like AWS or Google Cloud, because it's really something that is only for Azure. It pretty much supports all resources or API versions. Any questions at this point? Or is there any face? I don't know. Okay, I'm sorry. Just was wondering if there was a question. So it supports all the resources types, and it has actually, this is a strength of Bicep. You can connect to a API version. So if you want to use a specific API version, you actually can do that with Bicep. And I'm not aware you could do this actually with PowerShell, for example, or CLI, or also not with Terraform. So this is, I think, a pretty specific and also a strength of Bicep if you want to do this. It also has an excellent intelligence support. That's actually for Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio, you actually can use this directly supported by Microsoft. This is something I really like from Bicep. But in contrast, for example, to Terraform, it does not have basically a state file to manage. Our state file is actually stored in Azure. So it's something that Microsoft kind of manages for you. You can actually see it as a strength, but also the downside of it, because I know that Terraform has a state file which a lot of people really like, because the state file can be managed by yourself, and you can configure it pretty quick and easily. But this Bicep is not the case. So, as an introduction, what is Terraform? It is by HashiCorp, so not Microsoft. It may not be free, because it's actually something that is an offering also that's is provided by HashiCorp, in the sense HashiCorp has some part that is free, some part that is not free. So if you need some more resources, more abilities, more features for it, you may have to pay for it. Keep this in mind. And it is also, but it's the advantage is it is not domain specific. So it's actually ideal for multi-cloud solutions. It uses the data file, like I said before, and it can be handy in their cases. So PowerShell as a glance. PowerShell is a native tool by Microsoft, and it is actually not just for Azure. It's something you can use for Windows. So it's also any Windows server, Windows-based server. You actually also even can use it on Linux. Microsoft has just also exported basically also to Linux. This is also a possibility to use. But PowerShell is basically native for Windows is in the Microsoft environment. And like I said before, many DBAs actually are using it. I will show you the reason why. There actually are frameworks for DBAs in PowerShell, so it's pretty easy to use, and it's pretty liked also in the community, because it's also an open source tool that we will talk about. So the scenario we are discussing today is, like I said before, is actually based on a presentation that I've got for a while. So this presentation here today is pretty much an improv thing for to learn from myself, but also to discuss with you, and also for your user group. It's very specific. I've never talked about this before, so it's, if you see something I'm missing, or I say something wrong, please put it out and tell me so I can learn from it as well. So it's really something that we can discuss together. It's not just something that is my strength. So just as an overview for the Azure Data Platform, that's basically my home base again. So as a data engineer, we are talking today about this kind of thing. We have offerings that are basically platform as a service, but also edge computing by Microsoft. We are not going to talk about this. I also know you could do this in Bicep and other stuff, but just for an example, just to have something to focus on, we want to deploy a virtual machine and discuss how that could be done with the Bicep and how this could be done within the Terraform, and discuss what are the differences here. The reason why as a data engineer you might like a VM is that from a standpoint of a data warehouse. If you have a data warehouse that has a whole framework with a lot of scripts that work together and stuff like this, and you want to put it in Azure for some reason, then a VM is very nice solution to do this, because it actually offers 100% SQL Server compatibility. So if you consider other options, you always have to keep in mind that there is a risk that there may be breaks that you will have if you move to Azure, because actually if you have a SQL Server on premises, on VM, it pretty much acts the same as if you would have on premises. It's actually pretty nice solution for this scenario. As a base architecture for a VM, what we have to keep in mind is you have a resource group. Basically, we have a VNet, we have a subnet, we have a disk and stuff like this. So we also have this to keep in mind as a data engineer. And what I'm also going to discuss is how we are going to connect to the VM. We will see that later. There's a pretty simple solution to this for a data engineer. So also something that we have to talk about is something that actually, as a data engineer standpoint, is always is a bit confusing, is how to bring your backups to a VM, basically, in a solution that is actually just for infrastructure as a code, because Microsoft actually provides a tool for a database engineer to move into Azure with just graphical user interfaces you can use. There's actually something called a migration tool that you can migrate your databases to Azure, and you have even the possibility to check this. But here in this scenario I'm actually discussing today is a bit different, right? Because we want to reuse it your own VM again, and you also want to be able to delete it after you used, or just to play around with it. So this is not something that we really can use with a graphical user interface, because that would be too error prone. So how do we actually can to backup files via it's a drag and drop? This is one solution, of course, amongst others, but just for the simplicity as a data engineer, I'm going to use this, and we have the Azure file storage that we can map together with even to multiple VMs, and we actually can use and play on the repositories, but also the backups again, and you play around with. So what we could do basically is just a drag and drop and put it here to the file storage. And like I said before, we have, for example, we could also have several VMs that are kind of connected together to the file storage, and just use it that way. So we have something that is pretty cheap as well. So it's way cheaper than our VM storage. The VM, also on the VM, you also can do is to the file storage. You can actually map it as your network drive. So it's for a database engineer standpoint. Again, it's pretty easy to use and to do your backups with, or to you store your backups, for example, if you want to use this. This is all possible. Just a quick word about the RTP. If you are going to be using RTP over internet, then keep in mind this is a kind of a risky thing, because the port is basically detectable from the internet. There are port scanners out there. You can actually find out who is actually using RTP at the moment to the internet. That way you also can actually do DDoS attack on your VMs, which then actually may lead to the problem that you may not be able to access your VM anymore. So this is something you need to be aware of. Generally speaking, if you want to connect your RTP to the internet, you should actually always have a secure tunnel to it. With either it's going to be a VPN, so it's a VPN connection from your computer to your cloud endpoint. This is possible, but what I'm going to use here is Azure Bastion, because like I said before, I'm not an infrastructure engineer. I want to have it simple and easy. So it's for a database engineering standpoint. I just want to use something that is also managed by Microsoft, has something like a security as service by Microsoft. Works with the browser. The RTP basically gets tunneled with TSL SSL, so you have basically a secure connection from your own computer to the Azure endpoint, just with your browser. So you have basically your public IP also hidden, so it's not exposed to it. But also, it's always to have the possibility to use VPN at this point. But I would say most database engineers are not able to do this, myself included. Actually, I would not know how to do this. So I'm just going to use this solution to have something that you actually can use pretty easy. This is also just a discussion here how to do this. Yes, everything what we are going to do is possible in PowerShell, of course. So what we want to have is a TLS connection from to Azure portal to just basically go to the Azure portal, and then we go to the button that says I want to open your VM, and your VM basically directly gets opened in your browser. So what you will see your normal RTP connection, but you usually will have in your RTP software, is happening in your browser. So it's just, literally just basically your own browser is the portal to your RTP client, your VM, to say so. So the actual code presenting here in PowerShell is about 100 lines long. So and first you connect it with connect AC account, then you just take the whole deployment, which is actually takes about 1 hour with PowerShell. I've read that actually PowerShell it should be quite quicker, because in Bicep you have kind of parallelism. You can actually deploy it stuff like this faster than you could do in PowerShell, because PowerShell at this point is really an intuitive language. So what you have with the advantage is with Bicep is that you have the possibility to also deploy quicker, because everything is also managed by the Microsoft. Also, they have a kind of a state file that is within Microsoft Azure, because this is something is provided by Microsoft directly. With Terraform, I don't know exactly how this really works with Terraform, but I imagine this is something that's similar with this because Terraform is pretty much you have also a Terraform server. So I think with this state file you use, you probably also would have some parallelism in this place. I'm only going to demo some main points, so also demo some browsing objects, so we understand what is actually underlying on this point, what's actually under here under the hood in the RAM. So we actually also can adapt the code to RAM, and that means, of course, you will also be able to adapt your code to Bicep, and of course also to Terraform. Everything that I'm presenting is also done basically from the desktop in Visual Studio Code. So we don't really have to administrate it to the portal itself. This is actually really done in Visual Studio Code. So what we have here at this point, just the basic we want to have is set up to where we want to deploy it. And because I'm living here in Switzerland, so my base file is, let's say, in Switzerland North. We will discuss it, how we adapt this in other languages like PowerShell. But here, this is as a example file. This is really done in Switzerland. The resource group name I'm having here is called the conference lab. So we have also the storage we can pick from. So I'm picking the cheapest one. Is just the standard LRS, and we are also going to use our VNet subnet address prefix. We theoretically also could change, which we are not going to do at this point. I'm also going to pick standard VM sites. Basically, we will see what we can pick from a bit later. But here, I'm just going to use pretty much a standard one. So we have some kind of power behind it for our SQL Server solution. So what we also want to consider is, of course, we want to have something that is provided by Microsoft. So it's a Microsoft SQL Server. There is actually a VM directly by Microsoft you could use. And we want to have, for example, SQL Server 2019 on Windows Server 2019. We want to have use a SQL Server Developer Edition, which is actually an edition for SQL Server that is only for non-production purposes. That means if you want to have your solution for a production case, you need to have another solution, for example, the SQL Server Enterprise Edition, which is for productive environment. So SQL Server Development Edition is something that is for free, but just it also has the same abilities like SQL Server Enterprise Edition. This is really the highest tier you can have for SQL Server. So if you want to use this, keep in mind SQL Server Development Edition is only for non-productive purposes. And you also can select a version, but here we are just going to use the latest version of SQL Server Development Edition. So if you want to know more about this, Microsoft has also published a full tutorial about this here for PowerShell. So I'm not going to more into this in detail, but just show you that you actually can browse some objects with PowerShell. So, for example, what we want to know is we have a location to let's say UK here at this point, want to know what kind of offerings we have. So we can also check we have in ARM those possibilities. What you also can do, of course, is always to use this graphically in browser. So like this, you can go to the geographies and see what kind of options you have. For example, you also see everything when these options actually exist. So you have those information as well, also very nicely as in your browser. But if you want to know the names of the offerings of the objects, then you actually have to do this with PowerShell. I'm not sure how far you really can go with Biceps or with Terraform, but in my experience, this can be very nicely done even in PowerShell. Just give you an example like this. Get the location, for example, I can get the whole snippet, the whole the total offerings, all offerings that are possible in this location. For example, we get this Azure Active Directory, for example, but also Azure services. That is quite important for data engineering people. So this is a quite easy way also to find out what kind of location I want to pick. If I live, for example, in UK, I want to know which location has more offerings, more objects to offers. Then you actually can use PowerShell for that. I believe this is not possible with Azure. It's not possible with the Bicep and either with Terraform because those languages are behaving a bit different at this point. So this is something that you might want to use PowerShell for. So here, what we also can do is we can actually look for specific words. For example, we can also filter it with PowerShell because we actually can get the objects and pipe it through the objects that we can actually use. Also the same location here against and look for a word and filter for a word that is called virtual at this point. So for example, we get here is our three objects of a desktop virtualization, SQL virtual machine. Okay, this is probably what we want actually to get, and also virtual machine images, for example. So this is also something you could do. I think this is something you could do basically with the Bicep the IntelliSense solution that Microsoft provides you via Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code. So if you really want to get this, basically, again, with PowerShell, this is something that is, for me at least, as a data engineering standpoint, is very nicely to do, but you also can do this in other languages. So, but I want to know what kind of offerings we actually would have. So we actually can get this, and I believe you can also get something like this via Bicep or Terraform probably. So something that you have to be aware of if you have different kind of offerings, like for databases, sorry, for virtual machines with different kind of cores, for example, different kinds of RAM sizes. Also can count data if you want to. So if you want to know how many actually are possible to get, what kind of different possibilities you have, this is also very nicely done in PowerShell. So this is also possible, of course, via virtual machine selector. So you actually can also browse it via the GUI. But if you, from the standpoint of an infrastructure of as code, you need still to know the names of the objects, so you actually can reuse it later at this standpoint. Just to give you an overview, what kind of possibilities that means to have is you have basically the possibilities of a VM that is very entry level. Costs about, I think, $5-10 per month, something around that. Up to have a VM with extreme parallel power that can cost up to like $16,000 per month. So be careful what you deploy here at this point. Probably is just something pretty normal for Azure infrastructure people, that they have to be careful what they deploy, because some stuff can be expensive pretty quick. So offers, what I already was talking about it before, but the kind of offers you can get, and you can actually pretty much choose even to up to SQL Server 2020 with Windows Server 2020. But also, you could also have something with Ubuntu, so Linux. You also can bring your own license. For example, if you have a SQL Server license laying around, then you actually can also bring it. The reason for this is there are companies that buy SQL Server licenses in bulk. So they may have one or more SQL Server license laying around. So you actually can bring it in, which makes also the solution for you much cheaper. So you actually can get up to 80% cheaper with it. If my mind serves right, I'm not going to go deeper into that. But in my normal session here at this point, I would also explain why it gets cheaper as it is. Usually it will actually get cheaper up to like 65%. But with 65% cheaper basically, but additionally if you bring your own license, I think it could be up to 80% cheaper. So, like I said before, we also have the different SKUs. That means we want to know what kind of offerings for SQL Server basically Microsoft offers. And I talked about it as an enterprise solution, enterprise SQL Server Enterprise Edition, which is for production purposes, but also SQL Server Development Edition, which is for development purposes to test it. But there are some others like standard. We have also Web Edition and so on. I also said before, you actually can map your network drive. You actually can do this also with PowerShell. And of course, you can actually use PowerShell at this point also for your Bicep solution. So if you work with PowerShell, Bicep, probably also for Terraform, then you are still able to use those kind of things also with PowerShell. So you actually could tell Bicep, please actually you also execute something in PowerShell that is directly on the VM and use it then for your solution again. Also, what I like to mention at this point is, which are very helpful helpers, is Chocolatey, because this is also a reason why, for example, DBAs, the database administrators, like to use PowerShell, is that you actually can automate your VM. So, or also in the past, in the on-premises solutions, a lot of people use PowerShell to automate other things that used to be, for example, VMs directly on premises, for example. This is open source free. We have actually the possibility and install automatically. Chocolatey is not entirely free though, because there's also enterprise solution that you can use. The enterprise solution basically is then closed source and also sold to companies, but the stuff I am presenting here is something you can use for free, and you can actually just install a huge library of software. That means you actually just can pick something, install it with just a single line of code, and pretty much walk away from your computer, and it gets installed of its own. Unattended, so you have basically a solid install for you. Install Chocolatey, this is one example how you could do it. Of course, you also could do it via Bicep, I would say. So it's basically just this way. And of course, there are other possibilities for this. So if you VM, for example, does not have access to internet, you also can download it, and you also can execute it that way. There are so code examples that you will see here, for example, is let's say SQL Server reporting services. This is also a tool for database engineers, and you also can actually give parameters like this. Most cases we just install it like this. Choco install Chocolatey GUI, for example. Microsoft Edge is the browser, the tablet editor is just an editor for the database engineering people as well. Git, for example, and others just put in a -y for it to accept the license and say, I want to do this. So you actually can deploy it and walk away from your computer that way. So upgrading is also easy. Just cover this very quickly, and also there's a quick fix, so we can actually spend more time on the discussion. What are the pros and cons for each tool? DBA tools is another possibility to use. We also have the possibility to have administrate to your database solution via PowerShell. This is something that's very handy because you actually can just, for example, your whole database instance with this line of code getting backupped. So this is a backup we do here. You also can of course restore it the same way basically, and just say I want to have it that way, and just do it for you. If you do it in TSQL script, for example, then it's going to be quite a long line you have to do. But in PowerShell, this is very neatly done, and it's also in a secure way because DBA tool is, by the way, also signed. It's something that is very secure. It also uses, for example, secured connections and stuff like this. So this is something that is very popular amongst the DBAs. So the big discussion now is this all thing that I'm presented also possible in Bicep? Yes, it is, and actually there's more. So you actually even could do some templates in Bicep that you can create. You actually can even say, hey, people, you actually can pick something that what we are provided to you. For example, standard ORS, you can get a GRS and other stuff like this, and you actually can pick from it. You also can pick from like I said before, the API that Microsoft provides to you. So you actually have more abilities to this. There's a message from me. Just give me a second. I don't see the message anymore somehow. Okay, sorry. Anyways, this is something that actually has, is really more abilities for you in Biceps that you don't really have in PowerShell. So, for example, like I said, you have the parameterization possibilities. So, if you want to deploy something like this in your portal, you can do this. People, like I said before, you actually can pick your solution. You actually can also administrate the solution. You as from the infrastructure is engineering standpoint, this is probably also offers you more possibilities because you can actually give your customers, internal customers, or maybe also external customers, the possibilities to pick choices they may pick, and you have the control about this, but you actually is good to pick. So what we can actually also deploy those kind of those with kind of templates, kind of also the pics, also to tenant or to the resource group or to smaller size, small chunks of your Azure solution to your exact people, to the exact audience you want to provide those templates. So what's the Terraform? Yes, this is also possible, of course. You can use actually the whole solution I presented to you the Terraform. Actually, can actually even use something like this Azure Terraform. You can actually use something that helps you to transform your ARM to Terraform. I am, however, not sure how good it really works because I've never used it so far, if I'm honest. I wanted to show you this website that explains how this is possible, how this works. Give me a second, I will prepare this. Unfortunately, I closed the browser before, and by mistake, I also closed the tab.
I want to just to mention that we are all almost out of time.
Yes, it's only a few minutes left for this, and then I want to open the discussion for this.
Yeah.
I suspect you wanted to send me a message about saying that actually we are out of time. Is this correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Okay. For some reason, this doesn't open what I wanted to open. Oh, okay. Okay, I think let's keep this because we are running out of time. Because yeah, I can't find it on the quick. I will try to find it. So if you have some input into the discussion, I would like to discuss it with you to know how you see this as an infrastructure engineering standpoint, and tell me how you see it. If I missed something or if I did get something wrong, what do you think? Please open your camera and open your microphones and talk to me.
Yeah. So guys, if you have any questions, yeah, there's a question in the chat.
It's not a question. It's just how we are deploying Azure SQL and databases with Terraform. A very nice module because you can actually create users and media groups and.
Yes, so you are referring to the keywords, right? The secret vault. Mm-hmm. So yes, you can do this as in PowerShell, of course. You can do this. You also could do this in CLI, and Bicep. You can do it for sure as well. And I'm pretty sure you also can do this in Terraform. Yes.
Yeah, we're already doing like that, like randomly generating passwords for local users and storing them.
Mm-hmm. There's a question there, is Bicep and Terraform compatible? I'm not sure about that question, but
maybe I can elaborate. Can it do everything in Terraform or same it's in Bicep? Is Bicep ahead of in some functionality or?
Well, safe. I mean, Terraform is our own language as well, right? So you basically to do it basically in Terraform is you have so same way like in PowerShell, also the same way like in Bicep. The only difference is this actually Bicep is iterative language, while also Bicep is an iterative language. While actually Terraform is different. You actually kind of tell Azure what you want to have, so what you want to achieve, and in the background, what it does is to figure out what you want. So the approach that you actually do with Terraform is different. This is also why you have a state file. So you have a state file in which you also in the end can actually tell what you want to achieve, what you want on your VM solution, what you want to get, which in contrast, for example, is managed by Microsoft for Bicep. So Bicep is kind of helping you at this point as well, but you also have less stealing possibilities you can do if you want to say so. It's not to say you can do less than Terraform. It's just the approach and also the idea how you achieve your solution is different. That's it is. In PowerShell, it's just the classic way. If you are used to work on VMs, for example, with PowerShell, which is pretty common, right? Then you have exactly the same way. You have to define everything in each line what you want to get, what you have to do. So it's really iterative. That means you have to figure out what you have to do. Is exactly as shown you before with PowerShell. This is different, a bit different in PowerShell, in Bicep, and much more different again in Terraform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Did I answer your question that way?
Yeah, does that answer the question?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
I would say Terraform is probably more mature than Bicep, but I guess Bicep would get the features from Microsoft earlier than Terraform.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. The other thing, of course, it is, cloud agnostic, so you can actually create Terraform for other cloud.
We're deploying everything.
You mean
with
telemetrics with Bicep? Did you understand? Sorry?
No, I was just saying that I think Terraform is more mature than Bicep. Against an older, I guess, product. But I think Bicep will get like features as like new stuff in Azure more quickly than Terraform.
Yes, this is a good discussion point. I mean, this is, of course, Terraform is older. It's been around for some years. It's actually more mature at that point. You're correct with that. However, if you compare it to Bicep, Bicep is basically really a product by Microsoft, and Microsoft tries to do everything you can do with ARM to transpile it to Bicep as well. So that means also if there is a new feature for Azure, it will come to Bicep first. So actually, it's a bit more updated, a bit more actual. It is on top of that, you also have the APIs you can actually use to your solution. So you have always the best of your worlds, actually, if you want to say so. So it's something you have to discuss internally and find out internally as well. There is, in my opinion, not a clear answer. So it's but if you want, if that's my personal opinion again, if you want to stay on Azure, if you just want to do Azure basically, then you probably should use Bicep or PowerShell. That's my personal opinion. If you think about other cloud services like AWS or Google Cloud and whatnot, then probably Terraform is your better option.
So yeah, I think we're out of time. So I think we should leave it at that. So I'll say just thank you for this lecture. It was great insights and good discussion in the end. And hopefully we'll get you back. And of course, if I come to Switzerland, I will probably visit you. And of course, if you come to Iceland, and surely will come and visit me.
I will. Yes,
So,
of course.
So,
same for you. If you
you.
are coming to Switzerland, please let me know.
Yeah.
Okay.
So until next time, thank you.
Yes.
And
Have
have
a
a
nice
nice
weekend.
weekend.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.